Hey everyone, this is Jack Bourne. I'm the founder of Deadline Funnel, and I'm here with another expert to share some wisdom about how to grow your business. So I'm here with Sohan. Sohan, thanks so much for being here.
Anytime, Jack. Thanks for having me, bud.
So why don't we start with a little bit of your backstory and also who you help and how.
Yeah, look, I'll backstory is born in Mumbai, raised in Kuwait. Was there for the first 45 days of the war when Iraq invaded Kuwait just before the Gulf War. Evacuated that and witnessed one of the most powerful life lessons I could ever get, which is trust, certainty, and commitment. And that was really cool. I mean, there's so many other lessons, but these definitely will step up and they show up for me, Jack, because getting out of that situation, going back to India and evacuating as a kid with just 20 kilos of clothes, no toys, none of that, none of our other belongings, just those clothes. And then to start all over and see my parents do that all over again, it was amazing to watch, because I could see a man who went from a 9-to-5 job to transition into the entrepreneurial world because there was no choice. He was literally forced into it. And then growing up, I think that's where I learned the idea of how to be able to service people, be able to help people, and be able to grow a business, not just work in a 9-to-5, because that's not what I was cut out for. So I tried that, didn't work. I liked it a little bit, but it wasn't for too long. I went into the call center world, mastered the art of communication, learned culture skills, language skills around the world, and then transitioned from there into training people and individuals and companies on how to be more productive with their sales and their marketing and customer service, and then moved from there to start my own training company, my own coaching company, which then evolved to culminating to traveling around the world. Moved to New Zealand for 10 years, then moved to Australia, to Sydney for a few, and then now in Melbourne. And I'm in this whole process. I had a marriage that I was in for 10 years that broke down, separated from that, divorced from that, and then went through hell on a personal level, one narcissistic relationship after another, to eventually find my queen that I'm spiritually married to. And we're partners in justice, as I like to say in the business, because she's a co-founder of Epic Wealth Academy. And it's just been a beautiful journey to now be able to help and serve, we're on a mission to impact 1 billion families by 2029, Jack, to create this idea of freedom, the financial freedom within the family, and creating more joy. It's going well.
That's quite a story. So jumping ahead to now, so you've got this academy, but there's you teach people about video. So it sounds like you've taken what you've learned in the communication space, and now you're showing people a method to use this with video. So why video?
Yeah, well, because one, video is the future, and the future is now in the now. We're obviously seeing it now more than ever before, right? Like with lockdown, one thing has become prominent is the global reach of going virtual. Come on in, Babs.
Hey, Jack.
This is my gorgeous queen.
Awesome to meet you.
For your listeners.
Nice to meet you.
That has been a big one, for the fact that video is the future, and it's now more obvious than ever. But more importantly, it's a way to communicate intimately and build relationships. And we both are about getting people to understand, how do you take relationships first before revenue? How do you bring people first before profits? So the only way you can do that is by creating conscious communication, and video is a really cool way to do that.
Exactly. And as the queen of confidence on camera, I help 10x business owners and entrepreneurs to create videos that sell, drop out of the head, drop into the heart, because that's where we're actually able to communicate with that real feel and heart, rather than just head knowledge. We don't want just information, we want transformation. And that's why we're different.
And that's what you get through video, Jack. Like you'll see that a lot. Text is great. Text is fantastic on a page, and an image speaks 1,000 words, but a video it touches 1 million hearts. We know that. We see that every day. We see that with businesses, and it's not hard to do that if you understand the skill. So
it's not uncommon for entrepreneurs, especially if they're in, say, the internet space, where you're behind the screen, to have some reluctance to get in front of the camera. How do you guys teach your students to get past that concern and that fear, so they can get in front of the camera?
Well, step one, use props. Woo! They actually help. They help you get into the sort of the vibe, not take yourself so seriously.
That's right.
We remove the scripts, no teleprompters. We do not want you connecting with your audience. We're actually reading. So that's in your head. And as Tony Robbins says, in your head, you're dead. Connect to the heart, because that's where the real power is. So, giving them some fun ideas and some fun ways that they can step out of their, conservative role and step back into their hearts, because that's where they're really going to be able to, fulfill and convey that message different to their competitors.
Because there's a lot of that happening, right? You see conditioned entrepreneurs, you see conditioned business owners, especially business owners. Entrepreneurs still tend to operate with that whole big vision and the purpose of creating a dent in the universe. But business owners typically are more interested in making that cash and that profit, and they're chasing that. So the brain is wired naturally for us to be conditioned by society to go, well, use your intellect.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but a lot of people tend to lead with intellect as opposed to leading with their emotions, which is ultimately where people buy. People buy from logic and emotions, but even the logical buyer ends up making an emotional decision and then uses logic right after. So that has to be retrained, reprogrammed. And so sometimes on the top end of the scale where it's extreme fear, it's extreme, like there are people we know, we've had clients and members, they've actually stuck sticky notes on their screens to not see their own face because they can't stand seeing themselves. They tend to make funny faces to try and break out of that funk, but they don't seem to. So how does someone move from that sort of a zone where it's so extreme? Well, in that case, sometimes we have to do an intervention with them, and we have to really end their insecurities that they have, which could be from childhood traumas or whatever. And that requires a different level of deeper work with them. But generally speaking, there are some really cool things like what Vas already shared that can be done, and people can see a result in like 5 minutes.
Exactly. And when they come to a high vibe place, it's very different, because energetically, it's not that conservative headspace that they're used to. Here we are with props, getting amazing $1 million results. And they're actually seen as 10x business owners. Wow, it's possible.
True.
Yeah.
Are most of your clients using video as a way to get attention, to bring them into their world to sell something else, or are the majority of your clients using video as the sort of the way to monetize their business itself, like putting the video on YouTube and generating AdSense, or is it really a way to reach out, to form that relationship and bring them in to eventually turn them into a client for something else?
Yeah, it's actually both. But more, we see 95% of our clients and members tend to do that for them to be able to funnel people in, bring people in through the door, use their videos as marketing to create the dialogue, start the conversation, start turning someone from a suspect, if you may, to a prospect, and then from a prospect to be able to turn them into a customer or client. Yeah, so that's typically how they work.
So a lot of our clients are course creators, coaches, and some consultants. That doesn't describe everyone, but just in that particular avatar, what are you typically advising people to do in terms of if they've never done video before? What are they saying? So we talked about the energy and getting out of their head, but they have to have something, a message that they want to put out there. What do you see as some of the mistakes that people make versus what you teach them to do?
Well, what we see a hell of a lot of is people jumping on and just rambling. There is no momentary storytelling with actually telling a story with a strategy to be able to convert. You're killing objections through that story as well. So it feels very conversational, and that's the real big point of difference. Then once they join Video It, we help them with a specific headlines, which gives them a strategy to use for the structure of their video. It works a charm.
Yeah, because here's the big problem. Most of them say, I don't know what story to tell.
Exactly.
Jack, like you're telling me to tell a story, Jack, but I don't know what story. Where do I start? Like, which story do I bring to the table?
That's where I was going to go next. What stories do you recommend? Yeah,
exactly. Because a lot of them are afraid to be vulnerable,
Definitely.
And it's understandable. We were in that place once upon a time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's this constant need for us to be perfect. And as course creators, as teachers, as trainers, for someone who's been training people for 40 plus years combined now, one thing's for sure. The best results we've seen is when we've been vulnerable with our participants.
Definitely.
And our attendees and trainees, depending on what kind of event it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the mistake we've made is whenever we have held back from having to share a story, we have found a disconnect. We found a distance.
Definitely.
And the goal for any marketer should always be to find a way to reduce the gap between themselves and the target that they're after, right?
Definitely.
And story definitely helps to do that. So what kind of stories do you tell? Well, it depends. It's all contextual. One of the things that we say is, people talk about content is king. Content is king. Content is not king. I believe content is queen. Context is king.
Mm-hmm.
If you're contextual, if you're relevant, you'll be found. If you're relevant, you'll be visible. If you're relevant, you'll connect. So look at your life story and look at different aspects, different events that have taken place in your life. There are moments.
Epiphanies.
Yeah. There are like these aha, light bulb moments where people go, oh, wow, realizations.
Mm-hmm.
These moments are the moments that you can actually pluck and you can use in stories. And again, there itself, a quick tip for anyone who's listening with courses and content creators, think about moments where you can actually just speak about that one moment just before it took place, before the aha happened, and then what was the outcome after that? What did you do after that? Like instead of going into the long draw, 24 hours before that, what happened, or 2 years before that, people go into these random long ass stories and then they lose their audience.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stuck to that moment and you went right before, you took people in the room with you just before that aha, like you said, the epiphany,
mm-hmm.
and then you speak about what was happening then, to then speak about where the aha takes place and then what happened after that, that's more powerful because it's short, it's succinct,
exactly,
and punchy.
It's almost a summary of that moment rather than the whole detailed story, which doesn't get to a point or a peak.
Because Jack, you can bring the time that you use for a 10-minute story, which you can ramble on for the rest, talk about your entire life, or you can use those 10 minutes to really get detailed in that moment and bring someone with you in that moment and go use the 10 minutes if that's what you got. Mm-hmm. But you can get as detailed as you wanted to in that moment, as opposed to trying to cover so much detail in so much about your life. Exactly. That's where people get in the trap and they don't get it. But once they start doing this in videos, they'll learn it's easy.
It's a game
and they
changer.
go, oh shit, and you don't need a script, Sohan? Like, really, Vas? How do you? No, you don't need no script for that.
Exactly.
It's your story. It's your signature on it.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive one layer deeper on choosing the stories, because I could see someone coming to the conclusion of, okay, I know now how to get out of my head and be more present. I know that I need to share stories, but then they might choose a story that has no relevance to the audience. Can you talk about what are the criteria and the filters that you teach your students for what makes, like, choose this story, but don't choose this story?
Yeah, wow, that's a game changer. So mistake number one, picking a story that has no context to
the audience.
Yeah. For example, having to think about, oh, my marriage broke down and I went into this relationship with this woman who was toxic. And I'm here trying to teach you about how to connect with a cold audience and solve their problem. There's no relevance. Mm-hmm. So what I got to do is if I've got no other story, then I got to find a lesson in that moment there, in that whatever happened in that situation, to tie it back and share the teaching. So there's a simple strategy around this, right? It's a simple framework. Number one, when you're sharing a story, think about a struggle. Mm-hmm. Number two, think about a strength. Number three, think about a belief that you might have. Mm-hmm. And number four, think about your victory. So in your life, there are moments and events where you've had all of these four tenets that have taken place: strengths, struggles, victories, and beliefs. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is you got to bring these four together and do sometimes you can brainstorm it. You can, just put some sticky notes out and start making a list of all your strengths, all your beliefs, all your struggles, all your wins. Mm-hmm. And then you can literally pick from each episode of your life and see how what's the relevance to the point you're trying to teach, the strategy and the tactic you're trying to teach, and then go ahead and narrate that and take people in the room with you for that moment. It's not rocket science once you know those four components, mm-hmm. but with practice, it just becomes permanent and you get good at it.
Let me ask you on that. So that framework, is that, at first I thought you were referring to a framework where you're looking for stories that have each of those components, but then I thought, no, it sounds like you're identifying different categories that could bring out stories to tell. Which one of those is more accurate?
Yeah, good. So typically you'll have a lot of episodes in your life, all right? You have a lot of moments in your life. You have the moment where you took action. There was a moment where you were afraid and you took action. There was a moment where you were scared and you crumbled. There was a moment in your life where you felt nervous about something and you took action. There's a moment where you felt like you were not committed enough and then you renewed your commitment and you did something about it and you got creative. Let's say you have all these moments. Every moment has these 4 categories in them. Each moment has a strength that you had that got stronger. Every moment has a struggle that you went through that you overcame into a victory. Every moment has a belief that you had during your struggle in that moment and after that you formed a new belief.
Correct.
So these 4 categories apply to every single moment of our life. And therefore you can take any story now and bring relevance to your context. For example, I could talk about the story of this beautiful coffee cup or chai cup, as I like to say, and I could find a feature in this of this cup that has relevance to the point I'm trying to make with regards to the 4 tenets. And if I find that relevance from the feature and find that to connect with the teaching that I'm giving, now it becomes relevant for me to talk about the story of the cup. So at first, someone might feel like, where are they going with this cup? Because I asked them the question about how to clean teeth because I'm a dentist, or how to get people to come in for their cleaning of their teeth. And he's talking about a cup. Well, hang on, what is he on about? But if I took that feature of that cup and I related back to the 4 tenets that I gave, now the person in front of me, regardless of their profession, turns around and goes, wow, there's a universal strategy there. And now I got to, as a course creator or a content creator, I got to make sure that I provide the tactics to back up that strategy that I shared from the story.
That's great. Sense? It does. So a question that I have now is, what techniques do you give to your students in the very beginning of telling that story where the person wants to stick around for the payoff and they don't wander and ramble and get off on a track and someone just leaves the video?
Well, we talk very much about, emotion, very much about stopping the scroll. So using some sort of prop where people are like, oh, wow, I'm really curious. What are they doing? So stopping that scroll is, number one, because if we don't have that hook, people are not going to stop and, stay with the rest of the video. Using emotions, having the ability to fully embody your message, not just being a talking head. It's very important to be emotive, very important to have that high energy and also be able to speak a little bit faster, because if you speak really slow, you're going to lose your audience. Really important to be able to be upbeat, obviously depending on what you're speaking of, but being able to have that tonality to make it interesting. Use your props, use your hand gestures. Make sure you are looking eye level at your clients. It's soul to soul. It's heart to heart. We connect, and that's a big point of difference.
And while of that, I'm gonna turn around and say this as well. Like a lot of we get a lot of people that say, and actually most of them initially, they're so logical about things. Definitely. And they're dry about it. They go and they find this very fluffy, right? Yeah. Because it doesn't seem, because you don't hear that. I mean, first of all, there's no video school around properly. There aren't great mentors in the world that when it comes to video marketing that I've seen, very few on the planet. And then to top it all, people think, well, hang on a second, let's get straight to the point. People want to do business. They just need to get straight to the point. I get it. But it's different when you don't have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
How are you going to get someone to stick around and watch your 5-minute video if you're boring as a bat? I mean, imagine being in a relationship with a partner of yours who is boring as a bat, low energy, talks slow, doesn't make eye contact with you, always wants to be perfect, never wanted to show herself or himself and his flaws or her flaws, and is constantly going, no, wait, I got to come out presented to you. Like, at some point, there's going to be a disconnect, that's right? So that's exactly the same thing that happens in video, because it's intimacy that you're creating through video. And video is a medium where you can actually get a viewer to feel like they already know you before they actually get to know you 100%. In person. So if you're going to do that, you might as well do it right. So this strategy around what Vas just shared is really important. Movement is so mission critical in a video, because that brings energy to the table. Even when you're sitting, there's so many things you can do. And we're not talking about clever editing. You can do a lot of cool things with clever editing, but you know what? Solopreneurs and influencers and freelancers and some of these guys, aspiring influencers, And these guys don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the cash flow to go ahead and create that either. So how are they going to generate that excitement in the video and keep it contextual, but keep it relevant and also keep it exciting? We'll get the payoff in the beginning.
Yes.
Speak about the payoff of your video right up at the beginning. Use that hook, that prop, to connect with that payoff so it sticks.
Woo.
If nothing else, like, you know, there's this guy who does this wallet thing, and he opens it, and when he opens his wallet, it opens with a flame. Okay, that's his
awesome.
hook. Now, is that going to stop a scroll? Absolutely. But after that, he's going to have to maintain that. Now, that's going to mean he can't be boring just because he had a great start. It's like a race. You got to have a great start and a greater finish.
Yes.
And that requires us to create that journey. And storytelling, there's angles to it. Storytelling is one way of doing it. Sometimes when you're dealing with a cold audience, you don't always have to give a story, but there's a way you can still convey a teaching in a particular angle. Do you come from a pain point, or do you come from an angle of pleasure? Do you come from the problem-solving perspective, or do you come from a solution-giving perspective? You know, do you talk about the situation they're in, which is hell, or do you speak about, oh my God, that paradise, that dream island that they want to be on, metaphorically speaking, right? So there's so many different angles. If you know what you're doing and you know who you're speaking with, you can create a really great engaging video. One of the reasons why people love our videos, and we don't go by vanity metrics. Forget about the likes, forget about the views, forget about the shares. That's where the drama is, and that's where people get caught in. We're interested in the conversion. Definitely. How many people get impacted? How many people say, shut up and take my money, Jack, let's go. Like, that is what matters. You keep the bottom line and the top line increase. So if you can do that through video, and here's a kicker, unlearn the language you speak.
This is a huge one.
If your listeners don't take anything, whether they're doing a marketing video or they're doing their creative content in their courses, if they don't take anything from this interview, there's one thing can shift everything in their business. They can see a massive trajectory shift. What do we mean by unlearn your language? Well, the problem is a lot of people speak jargon. That's one big one. Okay. But let's say everyone knows that the cliche is, okay, don't use jargon, don't use technical terms, Jack. Okay. But then there's the next bit, which is just our language. Example, the mistake people make is, oh, they're selling their water product. You know, you got to drink this. And when you drink this, Jack, you will hydrate your body. I hydrate my body every single day. And every cell, when it gets hydrated, I feel the energy. See, how many people don't understand the word hydrate in the non-native English speaking part of the world? What is another word for hydrate? Oh, let me use quench. Well, how many people really know the word quench compared to, let me use the word drink? Now, drink, everyone knows that word, even people who don't speak English, right? So if I'm going to say, quench, I'd rather skip that word. I'd rather let go of hydrate. And we'd rather say, hey, drink this, because every time I drink this, every cell in my body is drinking this liquid. And this is exactly my secret to my youth and my fountain of youth and energy. Like, that just gets people attracted. Now you're tapping into a wider market and you're hitting home to a wider audience, creating deeper impact and wider influence.
Exactly. Keeping the languaging simple is universal. So you're speaking to a lot more people rather than just the limited people that may be within your field.
100%.
So I really wish that we had more time to go into this, because you guys really have my head spinning about all the possibilities, and it's clear that you guys know your stuff. So where can people find out more about what you guys offer and maybe get some resources?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're available on Facebook, so they can find us if they look us up. Vas Besim, VASBES. You find her on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well, and Instagram. It's Sohan Gokarn, SOHAN GOKARN. It's a tongue twister, but I'm sure you'll have it in your show notes. We've got, one of the things that people go, well, how do we just get started with something? And so because of that, we never had something like that. So we looked around everywhere in the world. There's nothing that is available to create that. So we finally created a checklist showing people a very shockingly simple, really, really simple 3-step or 3-way process that they can start creating videos that sell on social media. So if they go to checklist.videoit.club. So that's checklist.videoit.club. They can go ahead and download it and get that gift straight away.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. We'll include that in the notes. Listen, it was really great chatting with you guys, and
Likewise.
I love the part where you guys were talking about stories and your framework. I love story frameworks, so that really resonated with me. So yeah, great to get your thoughts on this, and yeah, we'll put the links in the notes below. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jake. Thanks
we
for having us.
appreciate you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.
See you, man.